Hello, friends, and welcome to the Imago Nutrition Podcast. My name is Mark. I will be your host today. This is the podcast where we answer your questions and give you practical nutrition strategies to help you and your family flourish. And today's kind of a fun episode. If your curiosity was piqued by the title of this episode, I understand because I recently did a Q&A with two high school classes up in Minnesota. I live in Nashville, but by the grace of God, we've got technology, and so I was able to pipe in via Google Meet and speak with two high school health classes in Minnesota. And so what I thought I would do is actually bring you the questions that were asked to me by the high schoolers in sort of a rapid fire Q&A session that I was able to do with both classes. And so if you perhaps have a high schooler or a teenager or middle schooler, and they're starting to ask nutrition and fitness questions, and you're kind of curious, like I'm kind of curious what the answers could be, what sort of questions high schoolers are even asking, or if you're just looking for some practical advice, these are questions that are applicable to adults as well. And so it's not limited in terms of applicability to high schoolers. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of present to you the 35 questions that were asked to me. Again, I had fairly limited time. Any one of these questions, we could spend a half hour and talking about very in depth, but this was a format where they submitted questions and I would answer and give them sort of like a minute, kind of nugget response. And some of the questions are about nutrition, some are about fitness. Nice little blend. And so thought it would be fun to bring that to you. And so if you've got your own questions, by the way, you can always submit those to us. And so to do so, you can go to imagonutrition.com/podcast. There's a form there. And if you've got a burning nutrition or fitness question or healthy lifestyle question in general, we would love to help you for free by considering that to be a topic for a future episode. And so head over there, shoot us your questions. Would love to hear from you and the sort of questions that you have to help you and your family flourish. And so, again, as I said, recently did a Q&A. And so what I'm going to do is kind of work through these questions really quickly. That's the caveat here, is that there is much that could be said on all of these. Excuse me. But I wanted to present in pretty much the same format that I did to the high schoolers, my immediate response to satisfy some of their burning questions. And so with that, there was 35. There was actually more than that. I think there was more like 44 or something like that questions, but there were, of course, duplicates. So there were a couple questions that came up a couple times. So I removed those, didn't answer them twice, would answer them once for each class. And so I'll do that. So it ended up being 35 questions. And so with that, here are the 35 questions I was recently asked by high schoolers related to nutrition and fitness, and my very brief responses to them. And admittedly, number one is the most technical. I won't get into a long diatribe about this. There's some kind of, very fine-tuned ways to respond to this. But it was a very fascinating first question to kick off the whole thing. It was, can you exploit the amino acid tryptophan and with some carbohydrates get more sleep and then have it help quicken recovery speed? I'm not going to go into a long dissertation about tryptophan. It's an amino acid. It has implications for sleep, serotonin, melatonin, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, the shortest way I could answer this is that sleep and sleep quality is multifactorial. Okay, so a lot of people are looking for that one thing to do to suddenly have great sleep and then suddenly hasten recovery from a workout. And that's simply not the case. And so there are many things that go into sleep quality. Sleep and sleep quality are incredibly important for tons of reasons that we could go into. Again, it would take a long time to discuss them all, but just know that sleep quality is multifactorial, okay? There is evidence that carbohydrates help sleep. There is evidence that increasing tryptophan can also improve and help sleep. So the answer is, can you exploit tryptophan and carbs and get, more sleep? The answer is maybe, possibly. For you, lots of things go into that. But the overarching way that I wanted to respond to this is that sleep is multifactorial and we shouldn't be focused on doing one thing, but lots of things well. Okay. And on that, there is a paper that I read in advance of this question. It's called Carbohydrate and Sleep, an Evaluation of Putative Mechanisms. It's by David Benton, 2022 et al. And in that paper, he talks about essentially exploiting tryptophan, et cetera, and some of the implications for sleep. But at the end of the day, one of the summarizing points was this, quote, even if high intake of carbohydrate did increase the levels of brain tryptophan, melatonin would only be synthesized when it was dark. And what that is alluding to, if you read the whole paper, is that sleep is multifactorial. So even things like carbs, even things like tryptophan rely on other factors like it being dark in the room. So maybe you could have a bunch of carbs, you could be elevating your tryptophan, and you don't sleep in a completely dark room. That's going to impact your sleep. It's not that the carbs and or the tryptophan in and of themselves suddenly magically gives you good sleep. Okay. So all that's to say sleep is multifactorial. It's incredibly important. I thought that was a fantastic first question. It was the most technical question, to be honest. But it was kind of fun. And honestly, kudos to a high schooler for having that sort of question lined up. All right. Next one came up several times, and it came up in a few different ways. So I'll answer it here, and then there's going to be maybe a few versions of this down the road. But one of the questions, most repeated questions, was how much protein should you eat in a day? This, of course, depends on individual context, goals, your body composition, your life stage, your age, male, female, et cetera, et cetera. And back to it, depending on your goal, really depends on your goals. There's different recommendations for if you're trying to achieve optimal health, if you're trying to achieve weight loss, if you're trying to achieve muscle gain, if you are pregnant, if you are elderly, if you are an athlete, are you a strength athlete? Are you an endurance athlete? Are you a bodybuilder, et cetera, et cetera? There are so many different ways, and the research has shown that there are different optimizations per your goals. By the way, I wrote an article on that. You can go to the article section of our website and look for how much protein should I eat in a day, I believe is the title of it. And I break down all those different goals and the various research related to the recommendation. But here is the caveat. This, by the way, these two health classes were strength training classes. So they were weightlifting classes. And so a lot of my answers were geared toward understanding that they are likely talking about muscle gain. But I'll give you three real quick. If you're going for health, optimal health, the recommendation is between 1.2 and 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Okay. For weight loss, it's actually a percentage. Research seems to indicate that about 25 to 30% of your calories coming from protein is optimal for weight loss. Of course, those calories assume that you're in what's known as a negative energy balance, or else you won't be able to lose weight. But suffice it to say, 25 to 30% of those calories coming from protein appears optimal. And then for muscle gain, it would be 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And so, like many things, it depends. And that's one of the things that I encouraged the students at the start of both classes was that when you get into true understanding of these questions, the implications, is that more often than not, the answer is it depends. That's a good thing. That's one of the ways that you can actually be confident that someone knows what they're talking about, is that they don't have one singular answer for questions like this. And so it's a range. It depends on goals, et cetera. But great question. How much protein should you eat in a day? We place a lot of emphasis on protein for many reasons with our clients. And in this context, that was certainly front of mind for the high school students. Number 3, what is a good body fat percentage to be at to build max amounts of muscle? This was an interesting question. There's really no ideal body fat percentage for muscle building. That's somewhat irrespective of, those are two different things, both the fat storage and then the muscle gain component. So there's no ideal body fat percentage that I've seen. I haven't seen any research that says you're going to build a lot more muscle if you're at this percentage of body fat. I haven't seen that there because mechanistically, those are two different things. And so what I would say is that just be focused on being in a healthy body fat percentage all the time. Okay, so whether you're losing weight, whether you are building muscle, whether you are maintaining your weight, whether you're in a body recomposition, I would say we should be focused on having healthy body fat all the time and not going outside of the healthy range. And if you're wondering what is the healthy range, this comes from the American Council on Exercise. Healthy range of body fat for men would be somewhere between 6 to 24%. And a healthy range for females would be 14 to 31%. On the lower end of that, if you go below 14% for women, you go below 6% for men, you're getting into what's known as essential fat. You start to run the risk of organ failure, different types of breakdown. So that's why I say for men, 6 to 24%, and for women, 14 to 31%. So no body fat percentage optimum for building muscle that I've seen in the research. And so in general, we should just be focused on healthy body fat ranges all the time. All right. Number 4, how can you find a good amount of calories and fat before you do a workout? There's actually no scientific optimal amount of calories and or fat before a workout. So it really comes down to personal preference. Okay. So your calories and your macronutrient distribution, your protein, your carbs, and your fats, all of that in accordance with your goals. But when it comes down to right before a workout, it's actually personal preference. I have clients that don't like to eat within an hour or two of working out. I have some people that can be eating on their way to the gym and it doesn't influence their workout. So it really is about personal preference. Again, with calories, no set amount. So long as your overall calorie intake for the day is in accordance with your goals, whether that's muscle gain, fat loss, optimum health, etc. And so just keeping that context in check, you are free to consume as much or as few calories as you want before a workout, close, farther away from a workout. It really just depends. I know some people that work out first thing in the morning. It's hard to eat breakfast before they go in. I know some people that would not dream of going into a workout on an empty stomach. So in that sense, it depends. Okay. So number 5, what should we do if our body is sore the next day for restoration? This is totally normal, by the way. And so being sore means you challenged your body in a way that it wasn't currently adapted to being challenged. So totally normal, nothing to be shocked about, within reason, of course. Now, if you've never lifted weights and you go in and start trying to move massive amounts of volume with massive amounts of movements, you're going to be hurting. Yeah, you're not going to be able to walk for a couple days. That's extreme. We don't want that. But it's totally normal to be sore. Okay. So what I'd say is a couple things. 1, rest. Okay. Definitely rest. Hydrate, get your fluid in you. For adult, females, that means probably no less than 91 ounces of water. For men, that probably means no less than about a gallon, 128, 125 ounces. Nourish your body with nutrition, ample amounts of protein, ample amounts of, fiber. Continue to focus on protein, of course, because that is a recovery mechanism. And also low intensity activity can actually help. It can actually just kind of help blood flow. And so I have some people that, get into strength training and they're a little bit more sore than they will be down the road when they're more conditioned, but, lifting one day and going for a bike ride the next day, right? Really helps just kind of keep the blood flow, keeps the recovery going, et cetera, et cetera. So, resting, hydrating, nourishing your body with food, focus on protein, some low intensity activity, and not doing the same muscle group every day, of course, and switching up the muscle groups that you're training, the different modalities and the different ways in which you're training, changing that up. So totally normal to be sore. Those are a couple things you can do in the recovery. This one is funny. Number 6, is lemonade bad for you? I went, nope. That was like my answer. Like, nope, lemonade's not bad. Now, is a high sugar version of lemonade the only thing you should be drinking all day? Should you drink a gallon of lemonade a day? No, probably not. Right? That's a ton of sugar. But all food and drink that's, safe for human consumption can be consumed in context. It's about the overall context. It's not that, I wonder if this question was someone heard, like lemonade's bad for you. Okay. It's not bad for you. Like almost anything, including water, by the way, it really comes down to dose, right? So can too much start to have negative impact? Sure. But that's the same of water. That's the same of the sun. That's the same of exercise. That's the same of a lot of things. Okay. So is lemonade bad for you? Answer is no. You can absolutely include lemonade in context in accordance with your goals. Number 7, what's the most optimal deadlift form? Okay, so maybe you're listening to this, you don't do deadlifts, but deadlift is a very mechanistically important lift. It's a grueling lift. And I challenge, or I encourage the student that ideally they should have an in-person assessment. They should be working with a personal trainer. Me just describing what a deadlift form isn't super helpful, apart from broad strokes. You should definitely make sure that you're working either with a coach a strength training professional, a personal trainer, to make sure that you are in person doing this well so that you mitigate risk of injury. But essentially, in general, here's a couple things. You should have a hip width stance. You should have a fairly narrow grip. You should have vertical arms, which means, the barbell to your shoulders is a straight line. You should have your back straight. You should have your head up or looking forward, your eyes looking forward, because where the head goes, the back will and the body will follow. So eyes forward, put the bar against your shins, and then stand up. And I encourage them not to think so much about standing up as they think about pushing the ground down. Okay. And then to lock your hips and your knees at the top of the movement, and then to return back to the ground. So that might have gone over your head if you've never done deadlifts, but again, this was a strength training class, and so they are no doubt working on things like technique for something like a deadlift. It's an incredible lift. And by the way, if you've heard that deadlifts are bad for your back, that's also false. They are a terrific movement. I have a lower back injury from my military career and still perform deadlifts. Of course, I do it in a safe way. And I do it to build up my back. But that's essentially an overview of deadlift form. Okay. So question number 8, what's the best way to build muscle? Real quick, here's the big 3. Many things go into it, of course, physiologically, socially, emotionally, mentally, etc. But here's really the big 3 mechanisms or signals, I should say, that you can send your body to recruit new muscle fibers, to build muscle. Number 1 is resistance training. So that is some form, whether it's free weights, machine weights, resistance bands, etc. Resistance training. And the key component here is something called progressive overload. It's that you are gradually increasing the amount of volume that you're moving over time. Volume is defined generally as reps times sets times weight. So you can be going up in weight, but not up in volume. It's about reps, sets, and weight multiplied together. That equals your volume. So 1, resistance training, challenging those muscles. Number 2 is your protein intake, right? So that is the recovery component of this. I often say that strength training and nutrition is a tear and repair process. You are tearing your muscle at the gym and you are repairing it at the table. All right. So resistance training, protein intake, optimizing that. Again, if you're looking to optimize for muscle building, generally 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And number 3, a huge signal you can send your body is sleep. It's to actually sleep consistently 7 to 9 hours. There are other things, hydration, intensity, etc., workout programming, blah, blah, blah. But essentially, if you are resistance training and you are eating ample protein and you are getting deep quality sleep, those are the 3 biggest signals you can send your body to build muscle. Great question. By the way, building muscle is incredibly important. Ladies, for you as well. Okay. Number 9, what's a good meal plan? This, of course, depends on the goals, but this might surprise you. I actually don't really recommend meal plans. Meal plans have been shown time and time again to not be sustainable. Okay, so just doing the same thing over and over, or doing something that someone else tells you, or eating what someone else tells you to eat, has not been shown to be sustainable over time. And true health, true nutrition, true fitness is something that can be done consistently for a long period of time. So in general, I encourage them to think about their goals. And look, I get it. I've worked with athletes. I have athlete clients. We have specific, nutrition frameworks that we set up. I'm not saying that, the person that is looking to become a power lifter eats the same as someone that is looking to run a marathon. But in terms of a specific meal plan, we actually at Imago Nutrition, we don't do meal plans. It surprises people. We get a lot of inquiries like, hey, I need a meal plan. I say, look, what I'd like to give you is a nutrition framework. Instead of, fishing for you, I'd love to teach you how to fish. And that, by the way, is far more sustainable, I think far more enjoyable. But at the end of the day, you generally want to eat mostly what we call the 4 pillars. So what's a good meal plan? A good meal plan in general would be to eat mostly 4 pillars. First pillar being lean meat, seafood, and dairy. Number 2 being fruits and veggies. Number 3 being whole grains. Number 4 being nuts and seeds. So if you're looking for some sort of like structure or some sort of framework that you can just take with you, whether you're at a restaurant, in a gas station, at the airport, overseas, domestic, on a road trip, think about this. Eating more and more, or a high percentage, 85, 90, 95% of what you consume generally should be lean meat, seafood, and dairy, fruits and veggies, whole grains, nuts and seeds. All right. Number 10, how many carbs should we be eating? I would say apart from specific goals, like I referenced, like a marathon runner, I've worked with marathon runners. I work with wrestlers, work with soccer players, jujitsu competitors. Right? Do we have specific carbohydrate considerations? Absolutely. For the average American, for someone that's looking to be healthy, be strong, be energized, optimizing carbohydrates actually has more flexibility than you may think. I would say first and foremost, optimize your protein. So get to an optimal place of protein. Then you can allow carbs and fats to be more your personal preference. Okay. So I prefer more carbs in my diet. Danielle, my normal co-host and business partner and registered dietitian, she likes more fats in her diet. Okay. That's totally okay. It's totally under preference. Some days I have more carbs, some days I have more fats. Okay. That's totally fine. But yeah, if you're an endurance athlete, yes, I work with endurance athletes, and we may ramp up their carbohydrate intake, from like 55% of their calories all the way up to 70% before a marathon. Okay, but then we taper it back down. All right. So all that's to say, how many carbs should we be eating? As long as your total calories are accounted for and you're optimizing protein, I would say, it can be more about personal preference than you may think. All right. Number 11, what intensity should I be working out at? Very simply, yes, you should be working out with intensity, but I just want to make sure that it is a safe intensity. Okay. And so looking for that safe intensity is really the key. Okay. So what that looks like for any given person, it depends on the person. What's intense for someone that has never lifted weights is different for someone that's been lifting weights for 10 years. All right. But yes, you should be kind of making a weird face when you're lifting weights. Like you should be getting to a point where you might only be able to do 1 or 2 more reps of any given exercise. Right? You should be pushing yourself. You should be challenging yourself, and you should be bringing intensity to workouts. But just please know that that needs to be safe intensity. And that's not there's no way I can really quantify that for someone or give you an exact answer that applies to everyone. It's got to be safe for you to be able to move that, that workout or that movement. So intensity is key, but I want it to be safe intensity. All right. All right, we're getting through it. Here's number 12. What are the most effective lifts? And this, again, it depends on your goals. Okay. It depends on your goals. So if you're trying to be a power lifter, the most effective lifts are the ones you're going to be judged on, right? If you're a soccer player, the most effective lifts are going to be the ones that, allow you to be a better soccer player. If you are a strength training athlete, if you are a wrestler, if you are a swimmer, okay, what are the most effective lifts? Means something totally different depending on where you are in life and in context and with your goals. I would say just in general, remember that there's really broad strokes. There's kind of 2 different types of lifts. One is compound and one is isolated. So a compound movement is one where you have multiple joints working at the same time. Think squat, right? Think bench presses, think overhead presses, think any number of movements that has multiple joints, shoulder, elbow, knees, hips, etc., ankles, okay? Multi-joint movements are compound movements. Then there are isolation movements. Think like a bicep curl or a tricep push down, right? Only one joint is really moving. So that's isolation. So you generally want to be combining both of these. And then when it comes to like modality, whether it's a barbell, a dumbbell, machine, resistance bands, they're all good, by the way. Don't let someone fool you into believing that machines aren't as good as dumbbells and barbells aren't as good as dumbbells and blah, 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 blah. Resistance bands aren't as good as machines. They're all good so long as they challenge your body and you are increasing volume over time, your strength training, okay? So that was a good question about effectiveness of lifts. Number 13, this one was fun. How much can you bench? It's such a classic, like high school, like, dude, how much do you bench, right? And I think I surprised a lot of them when I said I actually don't track my 1 rep max. And I heard even one of the students yell out, why not? I have not tracked my 1 rep bench max in probably, I think the last time I did it, honestly, I think I do remember I was in Iraq. I was trying to hit a new, so that would have been 2005, 2006. I was trying to hit a new 1 rep max with bench. That was probably the last time I tracked it. It's 2024. Okay. So it's probably almost been like 20 years. Instead, I'm focused on volume. I am focused on increasing the volume that I challenge any given muscle group over time. Okay. But I did hear, look, and I remember being in high school, they have an itch. They want to know this guy that they're supposed to listen to if they can respect him. Right. So I use an app for all my strength training. It's called Fitbod. I love the app. I'm not on their payroll, but I love the app. And I recommend it to virtually all my clients that want to get into strength training. And so what it does is it projects a 1 rep max. Okay. It says, hey, based on the volume that you've been moving, so I'll be doing sets of 6 of a certain weight, and I'll do 4 or 5 of those sets. So I'm not doing a 1 rep max, but it will calculate and say, here is your projected 1 rep max. And if you're curious, because the high schoolers certainly were, my last projected 1 rep max was 296.8. Have I ever benched that? No, but that's what it's projected. Okay. And for context, I'm 5'11". I'm currently about 179 pounds. Okay. And I'm 42 years old. So 296.8, take it or leave it. If you think that's good or bad, doesn't matter. I'm focused on volume. Okay. So number 14, love this question. How many fruits and vegetables should I eat a day? And I was glad this one came up multiple times because 91% of Americans do not get enough vegetables and 88% of Americans do not get enough fruit or the recommended amount of fruit. And so I told them, I said, look, if you want to be in the top 10%, if you want to be elite in this regard with your nutrition, you want to get at least 2 cups of fruit and at least 2.5 cups of veggies every day. And adults need to hear that just as much as high schoolers. Okay. We are abysmal at consuming recommended, let alone optimal amounts of fruits and veggies. And so the recommended, which is really kind of like a baseline, is 2 cups of fruit per day, 2.5 cups per day of veggies. Okay, great question. Number 15, should you do a workout every day, like squat every day? The answer is not really. Okay. Part of optimizing fitness is recovery. Okay. So in general, I wouldn't work out the same muscle group 2 days in a row. I will do it every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for sure. But I won't do them 2 days in a row. In fact, some days, if I'm playing soccer that night, I won't lift legs. Okay. I'll just switch my workout around because I'm not looking to hit legs twice in the same day even. Okay. So all that's to say, even though strength and soccer are very different, I get it. But all that's to say, no, I would not recommend squatting every day. Eventually, you're going to have a depreciating rate of return. You're not going to see the strength gains, the muscle gains. Those are not going to be optimized because you're not allowing time for your body to recover. Again, remember, tear and repair. You're not allowing for that repair to take place. Okay. Number 16, what should I eat when I want to gain the most weight? So I think I broke it down in my answer to the students. I said, look, if you're just looking to gain weight, you just need to eat calories. The food really doesn't matter. Now, if you're looking for that weight to be predominantly muscle, you want to be eating high protein. If you want to gain muscle and be healthy, you want to be really focused on ample protein and ample fiber. And then again, whether you're trying to lose weight, gain weight, or gain muscle, optimize your health, whether you're young, you're old, you're male, you're female, you're an athlete, you're not an athlete, no matter what, we point people to the 4 pillars of nutrition. And by the way, I should say we do have a page that describes this in depth on our website. So if you're curious about the 4 pillars of nutrition, go to imagonutrition.com, IMAGO nutrition.com, and there's a 4 pillars tab in the navigation. You can read all about this. But again, no matter your goal, whether it's just health, weight, fat loss, muscle, weight gain, no matter what it is, we point people to 4 pillars. These should be predominantly what you're consuming 85, 90, 95% of the time is number 1, lean meat, seafood, and dairy. Number 2, fruits and veggies. Number 3, whole grains. Number 4, nuts and seeds. Okay. So when I have weight gain clients, we're not just trying to, as they call it, sloppy bulk. We are trying to gain muscle. We are trying to put on weight while keeping our body composition in a healthy place. And those are the same foods. It's just more calories of those and from those foods. Okay. Number 17, how do I hold my weight without burning off the calories at the gym? So this could be a scenario where the student or a person is losing weight and doesn't want to lose weight because of their exercise routine. Now, this is not often the case because in general, exercise, or what's known as EAT, EAT, exercise activity thermogenesis, on average only accounts for about 5% of the calories that we burn in a day. So often it's actually not the exercise that's causing someone to lose weight. It's that they're just underfeeding. Okay. So in general, if you're losing weight, it's about consuming more calories. All right. And so there's different ways we could look at the numbers, and I could help calculate exactly what a person is losing and then what we need to replace it with in terms of calories. That, of course, depends on the individual context. But suffice it to say, at the end of the day, if you are losing weight and you don't want to, you do need to move up your calories. And again, we want those calories to come from nutrient-dense, minimally processed foods like lean meat, seafood, and dairy, fruits and veggies, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. But at the end of the day, weight is the result of energy balance, and calories are energy. And so if you are losing weight with your current exercise routine and you don't want to be, you do need to look at bumping up your calories slowly, gradually, until your weight holds. Okay, so interesting question. Number 18, what are the optimal amounts of reps? So this is a fitness question. And there's not really an optimal amount of reps. Okay. Again, I go back to it's more about volume. So your reps times your sets times your weight. And if that volume, if the calculation of those three things is going up over time, slowly, gradually, safely going up, you are getting stronger. You are recruiting new muscle fibers. You are growing in that regard. That's ultimately what you should be thinking about. That said, I point I have a North Star study or paper that I use when it comes to sort of a strength training framework. And so this comes from the International Journal of Strength and Conditioning. It was a paper or a position stand authored by Brad Schoenfeld and others back in 2022, I believe. And you can look this up. It's free access online. Just Google resistance training recommendations to maximize muscle hypertrophy in an athletic population. This is the position stand of the IUSCA. Long story short, they boil it down into a couple key components, but on reps, in general, so it doesn't mean only, but they say in general for, again, strength and muscle hypertrophy, which is just muscle growth. All right. In general, they say you want to work most often in the 6 to 12 rep range. Okay. Doesn't mean 4 is worthless. Doesn't mean you're not going to gain anything at 14. But in general, more often than not, you want to be working and challenging yourself in the 6 to 12 rep range. On the lower end, 6 is where you're going to see more strength gains. On the higher end, toward 12, you're going to see more muscle hypertrophy or muscle growth. Okay. So again, it's not so much about optimal reps. If you're talking about a strength training environment, it's about gradually increasing volume over time. All right. But in general, as you're doing that safely, you want to often be working in that 6 to 12 rep range. Okay. And again, some people are like, no, it's got to be this. It's 8 every time. It's not. There's more nuance. There's range. Thank goodness. Okay. So number 19, what percentage of protein should I have in a day? I left this one in here because it was a little different on how much protein should I have. And I wanted to simply answer that for, again, it depends on your goals. And apart from weight loss, it's not really a percentage. It's more like a range. So again, like for muscle gain, it's 1.6 per the literature. It's 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. That's for muscle gain. But let's say you were looking to lose weight, as many of my clients are. For that, the literature actually does have kind of this big Venn diagram, and it seems that 25 to 30% of your calories coming from protein appears to be optimal for weight loss. I don't think the student was looking to lose weight, but I wanted to show that depending on the nature of the goal, the literature sometimes points either toward a percentage or more of a raw calculation based off your weight. Okay, so that was an interesting one. Number 20, how long should I wait in between sets? Again, going back to the resistance training recommendations by the IUSCA, they would say for strength, if you're looking to increase strength, minimum, or I think I say minimum. I don't think the paper says minimum. I think they say 1 to 2 minutes. I would say that 1 to 2 minutes is a minimum. I tend to rest 2 to 3 minutes between sets. There's many reasons why you want to do that. You want to allow your body to safely get ready to perform the next set. You want to allow things like ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is your body's energy currency, to sort of build back up so that you can tap that. You can move the weight safely and challenge yourself. But what we see is that the shorter and shorter that interval gets, the less and less strength potential you have in any given workout, right? So if you're looking to gain muscle or increase your strength and you're doing jumping jacks between your sets, you got to stop. You got to knock that off, okay? it can be kind of weird. Like you're sitting there at the gym and you've maybe seen these people. You're like, oh, they're just being so lazy. They just lift and then they sit there for a couple of minutes. I'm the guy doing that, right? Because I'm working on my strength potential and I know that I need to allow for at least 1 to 2, if not 2 to 3 minutes in between. Okay. So number 21, what is the best food you can eat? Again, I pointed them right back to the 4 pillars. Mostly lean meat, seafood, and dairy, fruits and veggies, whole grains, nuts and seeds. It doesn't mean that's the only food you can eat. Cheesecake isn't listed, and I love cheesecake. But lean meat, seafood, and dairy, fruits and veggies, whole grains, nuts and seeds are what you should be eating most often in abundance. And also research shows that we should be eating a wide variety of these foods, okay? Because there's so many micronutrients, so many vitamins and minerals that come across all these. You're not going to get them all just from eating the exact same foods over and over. I know we all have habits. We all like a lot of the same things, myself included. However, for many reasons, consuming predominantly those nutrient-dense 4 pillars and making sure that you're challenging yourself to eat a variety of those. So it's not just the one vegetable you like. It's multiple vegetables that you like. It's not just the one fruit you like most. It's a lot of fruit. It's different types of meat, different types of seafood, different types of dairy, low-fat, non-fat, and different fruits and veggies, different whole grains, right? So that's really the best, is those 4 pillars and a variety of those 4 pillars. All right. This is a big one. That this 20-second question is, how does fitness affect your mental health? We need to do more episodes on this because the research that's coming out is stunning in this regard. Suffice it to say, it's critical. It's critical. Okay. It's fascinating to see the amount of research that's coming out in this area on the impact of exercise, particularly strength training and mental health. But there was a study done recently that I'll just point to one that showed that exercise in general, vigorous activity, whether it be, more cardio focused or strength focused, is 1.5 times more effective than therapy or medication alone at reducing depressive symptoms in healthy adults. So you can have depressive symptoms even if you don't have depression. And exercise has been shown to be 1.5 times more effective than therapy or medication alone. Now, we are not anti-therapy, not anti-medication. Very much pro-therapy, very much pro-medication, but also pro-nutrition, also pro-exercise. And so it should really be a cocktail of many of those things. Long story short, how does fitness affect your mental health? It is critical for mental health, okay? From stress to anxiety to depressive symptoms, etc. Okay. So critical. Number 23, is chicken and rice necessary to get gains? Okay. There's this old bodybuilding culture that shoves chicken and rice down their throats. And look, I've been there. I've created meal plans for fitness competitive teams where, we had chicken and rice was a staple, but is chicken and rice necessary to get gains? The answer is no. Okay. Chicken is predominantly a great source of protein. And rice is predominantly a great source of carbohydrates. There are lots of foods that you can get great amounts of protein, both animal and plant. And there are lots of foods that you can get ample amounts of carbohydrates. Again, it goes back to lean meat, seafood and dairy, fruits and veggies, whole grains, nuts and seeds. It's not chicken and rice. Those aren't pillars. Those are foods within those pillars. And there's a lot more that you could explore. Okay, so that's the good news. If you want to gain muscle, you don't have to just eat chicken and rice to do it. Okay. Number 24, what split is optimal to gain muscle? This is basically, how should I break down the different muscle groups across my workouts? The answer is, it depends. If I have a client that can only work out 2 days a week, then guess what split they're doing? They're doing full body splits. If I have a client that likes to work out 6 days a week, we're probably doing push, pull, legs, auxiliary, and maybe an ab day, or I don't know. We're going to be able to break down those splits very differently. Maybe they want to hit chest and tri. They want to do back and bi. They want to do legs, and they want to repeat those 3 in a given 6 days. It really just depends. There's no optimal split. It's really about challenging those muscles. Okay. So again, per, the resistance training recommendations, you should be challenging any given muscle group that you want to grow with at least 10 intense sets taken to near failure per week. Okay. So minimum, if you want your chest to grow, According to, again, the paper, if you want your chest to grow, you should be challenging that with at least, doesn't mean that that's the most you can do. You can do 20 or 30 sets, but at least 10 sets need to hit your chest, challenging it to near failure per week in order to grow. So it's not so much about the split, it's about the volume. It's about challenging the muscle groups accordingly and doing something that you're able to do within your life context and your schedule. Okay. Number 25, how much exercise is required in the week to stay healthy? Great question, keeping in mind that health is a spectrum, right? And so what health looks like for someone might not look the exact same or might have different constraints or considerations for someone else, but health is a spectrum. It's not like you're either healthy or not healthy. It's about stacking up many. It's very multifactorial. But in general, right, and I believe this is the American Heart Association, in general, for cardio, you want to be looking at about 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular training per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity. And then on strength training, this is, I can't give an exact number on it. It really varies by a lot of things. But what I would say is at least you should be strength training at least 2 to 3 times a week. Because again, if you can only work out 2 times a week, you probably need to be doing some full body exercises so that you can hit the various muscle groups. You got to hit your legs. You got to hit your pull muscles. You got to hit your push muscles. You should be doing overhead. You should be doing auxiliary, et cetera, et cetera. I would say it's tough for me to see a scenario where someone working out once a week is ideal, or even at a minimum. Granted, one is better than none. However, I would say you should be strength training at least 2 to 3 times per week. Those don't have to be 2-hour sessions. They could be 30 minutes. They could be 40 minutes. Okay. But again, in general, 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardio, 75 if it's vigorous. And I would say on the strength training side, at least 2 to 3 times. Okay. Doesn't mean you can't do more, of course. You certainly can. I like to strength train sometimes about 5 times a week. And then I play multiple soccer games. So I get my, in a week. And those soccer games are usually somewhere between 90 minutes and 120. And so, and those are varying degrees of intensity. But that's kind of my routine, if that helps think about it. Number 26, do protein shakes work? I said, sure. They're not magic, but they do contribute to overall protein intake. Okay. So do they work? Yeah, they work. And then the next question is, what are the best protein shakes? So number 27, what are the best protein shakes? I said, whichever one you like the most. But in general, I'm looking for a protein shake. If it's pre-produced, if it's got flavoring and all that sort of stuff, it's just, it's a little shake that you're buying at the grocery store or something like that. I generally want to look for the leanest protein shake possible. I think we have some premier protein shakes in our fridge right now. Sometimes I do a protein supplement. I don't currently have one, where I just do protein powder mixed with water. I know some people like to do protein powder mixed with like milk. Totally fine. But in general, for me and for my clients, I like to encourage people to look for the leanest one possible. And that means the most amount of protein for the fewest amount of calories, so that you just kind of get rid of all the excess stuff that they like to put into those shakes sometimes. So just be looking for something that's really low in calories, high in protein. I'm thinking I like protein shakes to be at least 30 grams of protein, or they're not really worth my money, to be honest. And so, but yeah, protein shakes can be terrific. I would just also say, make sure that you are not relying on protein shakes to hit your protein goal. Okay. Number 28, I'll kind of get through these last ones kind of quick. How does nutrition help your body for fitness? It's critical. Nutrition fuels or deprives your body of its fitness potential. That was my answer. Nutrition can either fuel, it can be an asset to your fitness, or it can deprive, it could be a liability, and it can actually detract from your fitness. This is why elite athletes are almost always on a very regimented nutrition plan, because what you put into your body, I believe, ultimately, and I think the science bears out, it's more important than what you do to your body. Okay. And so with that was number 28. Number 29, what happens if you work out 7 days a week? Very simply, it's not like you're going to keel over and suddenly, be sick all the time, but you're just going to be hindering, you're going to have a depreciating rate of return on that work without recovery. If you're hitting full body exercise 7 days a week, week after week, month after month, year after, eventually your body is going to not have the chance to recover. And so you're going to be depriving it of its full potential. So don't recommend working out 7 days a week. Certainly not the same exercise, right? It's one thing if you lift 5 days a week and then you take 2 days off, but you do some jogging or some biking. Love that if it's part of your lifestyle, but I wouldn't be hitting the same exercises 7 days a week after week, month after month, year after year. Okay, you get a depreciating rate of return on that. Number 30, is protein powder good or should I just eat the protein? I say food first, sup second. Okay, that's kind of a mantra within Imago Nutrition. Food first, you should get the vast majority of your protein from whole, minimally processed, nutrient-dense foods. And if it's helpful and convenient and you can afford it, does a protein shake here or there, can it supplement? Sure, not a problem. But keep in mind, supplements are that. They are a supplement to the food. They are not the food itself. So food first, sup second. All right. Number 31, what's the difference between reps and weight? Like, do you benefit more from reps or from more weight? This is where I pointed them back to. It's not about weight necessarily. It's not even about reps necessarily. It's about volume, and that is reps times sets times weight. If your total volume is going up, you're getting stronger, you're recruiting new muscle. Okay, but you'd be surprised how many people are like, oh, I went up in weight, but they went down in reps and their volume wasn't increasing. And they're trying to wonder why they're not getting stronger, why they're not growing muscle. It's because they're not tracking their volume over time. So it's not so much about reps or weight, it's about volume. Number 32, what percentage of protein out of total calories I eat is optimal for the fastest and healthiest muscle growth? This is where I said this is a case where it's not a percentage. It's more of a raw calculation, and it's a range. It's 1.6 grams to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. That appears to be optimal for muscle growth. Number 33, how much weight should I try to increase each time to optimize muscle growth and strength? Again, this is about volume. I wanted to touch on this a couple times, even though it was asked a few different ways. It comes back to volume. Okay, so it shouldn't be about necessarily increasing weight. It should be about increasing volume. Does that include going up in weight at times? Yes, but it makes sure that it's measured by reps times sets times weight. If you're not calculating at least that, you don't really know if you're getting stronger. Okay. Number 34, how much protein should I consume a day if I'm bulking? 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is optimal for muscle growth. And number 35, this one was sweet. Someone asked, and these were submitted anonymously, of course. I love this question. It's why am I built everywhere except my biceps? Now, it could be for a lot of different reasons. It could be genetic. It could be activity. It could be training history. It could be nutrition. It could be a couple different things. It could be the way in which they're training their biceps. So what I encourage the student is to, one, kudos for being built in a lot of places. That's awesome. I wish only one part of my body needed work. But what I would do is I would focus on various isolation movements for the biceps, challenging the biceps from a variety of angles, ensuring that I am tracking the volume of my bicep exercises, so reps times sets times weight. Ensure that I'm hitting optimal protein, probably that 1.6 to 2.2 we talked about, and sleeping. Okay, and sleeping. And so that is, it's a great little microcosmic picture is that if let's just say you just want your biceps to grow, you've got to challenge your biceps. You've got to progressively overload your biceps. You've got to do it from a variety of angles. You've got to make sure you're tracking your volume so that you know volume is going up, not just that you're moving up in weight, but maybe you're going down in reps. You've got to have your nutrition in place, and you've got to have your sleep and recovery. Okay. So with that, those are the 35 questions that I was asked by high schoolers in a rapid fire Q&A. I hope it's been somewhat informative, maybe a little entertaining. And so all that's to say, fitness and nutrition, of course, is a love of mine. It's a passion of mine. It's part of why, or it's really why I do what I do in this regard. And so if I could be of any help to you, if you have any questions about your personal context, your personal training program, regiment, nutrition, please reach out. Would love to hear from you. Would love to see if I can help. You can get a hold of me or us by going to imagonutrition.com/contact. So IMAGO Nutrition, imagonutrition.com/contact. And if you don't mind, we'd love it for you to subscribe to the podcast. Drop us a review. Let us know how we're doing and share with a friend. We'd love to help as many people as possible. That's why we do this podcast. You can follow us on social media across all the major platforms at Imago Nutrition. Again, at IMAGO Nutrition. And as always, we'd like to thank Happy Pill the band for our theme song, Thinkin Bout Food. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.